when you're just as blown away by the wisdom or the words as the other person, that's the channeling. Now, whether it comes from higher self or angels, that doesn't matter. You know, we can get into that stuff. It's just wisdom. I like to just give it, it's wisdom. You're channeling wisdom.
How did you kind of continuously cultivate your belief in you just kind of constantly putting this out there?
Wow. I guess it started with being surrounded by the right people. You know, I did have, around the time I met you when I was 25, you know, I was surrounded by lots of spiritual friends who were intuitives, who were channeling and this, that, and the other, who they didn't necessarily have the psychological maturity to go with their level of ability, which is a whole other topic of conversation, because just because you have psychic ability doesn't, and you could tune into these realms, doesn't mean that the information you're giving people is helpful. You know, just because you're, you know, there's a quote that says, the truth without love is just a lie. Alicia Keys. And so a lot of times psychics will do that. They'll tell you the truth, but sometimes they even cause more separation when they're telling those truths. And so I'm very sensitive to those things. So I was surrounded by it. And I was so passionate. This is what happened. I was so passionate about spiritual gifts and abilities because when I learned about it, I had a teacher at first and who was the catalyst to reawakening my gifts. And he had brought us, it was a class, it was an energy class in his basement, 8 people, 12 people, something like that. And he had brought us through this activation, and I have this exact activation on my YouTube channel if people want to try it, that essentially, essentially what it does is it turns on the lights of your gifts. So what it does is it goes through your body, and anything that you may have numbed out as a kid because pain was too much or whatever, any senses of yours that you may have numbed out, this meditation resensitizes and re-stimulates the things that you don't know you numbed out and turns it back on. Very practical meditation. I did this one time, everything turned back on. And it's on my YouTube. It's called Soul Magic. Whoever wants to check it out.
We'll link it down below.
For sure. So I did that activation. And then from there, I was taught by my teacher energy mechanics. Like, how do you tune into people? How do you communicate with guides? It was a remembering and a learning at the same time. And what I most loved about it was how practical it was, right? It was a simple science. It wasn't meditate for hours on end and imagine rose-colored lights and go to the 5th dimension jargon. Because, like, as much as I'm spiritual and I'm mystical, I don't like fluff.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that, as you know.
Exactly.
There's a lot of spiritual posturing, if I'll put it that way.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like fluff. I'm very anti-fluff. And so I completely understand why so many people don't believe in or don't like the idea of psychics because there's so much fluff out there. Yeah. Right? So what I was taught was just the simple, practical methods of tuning into your gifts and how to use them in English in such a way I could explain it to my grandmother, right?
Nice.
This inspired me because I was just like, oh my God, I'm like, I found real magic. The whole world needs to learn this. And what I loved about it was not only you're learning real magic, but in order to tune into these gifts, you had to become a better person. You have to become more compassionate. You have to become more pure intentioned, more humble, because these are the things that raise your frequency, that puts you more in the vibrational vicinity of your gifts, because your gifts are on a light frequency. So as you become a better person, you get more in tune with your gifts. So as you learn real magic, you're making the world a better place. That was it for me. I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing. This is living magic. You know, so that's how it got started. I don't remember where I was going originally with this.
I mean, my question was like, how did you turn this into your job in a sense? Like, how did this evolve into you just saying like, this is what I do? Right. Because at some point I turned, like, I'll use the example. At one point I turned the corner and said, I tell stories for a living. That's what I do. Like, and that's a weird, that doesn't compute sometimes. Like, even to myself in certain moments, I'm like, oh yeah, we're really telling stories for a living. And then, yes, this is you. Anyone who's watching this, you are part of my story right now. Yes. You are listening to the story that I am sending you down. And not just me, I'm doing it in relationship to other storytellers. Yes. Right. But it became my job at some point. And I don't know exactly when I crossed that threshold, but it was a progression, of course, just like what you're explaining to me. But I knew that, like, wow, there's a superpower behind it.
Yes.
I use those terms. I use the superpower terms, right? I think magic behind it is another way of saying that. It's the same thing of sorts.
Yeah. So that's how it started for me, was when I saw how it can change the world, when I saw how real it was, it inspired me, and I just wanted to pay it forward.
Yeah.
So I started teaching classes, I started teaching other people, and that just evolved and evolved and started to evolve my gifts, and it just became me. You know, it wasn't a thought at that point. It was just so fun to channel and to receive this wisdom that I was equally as blown away with as other people.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm channeling, that's why you see, if you watch my videos, I'm often giggling at myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm having such a good time, and I'm also often blown away by the wisdom that gets to channel through. I'm like, damn, that was good. Right? It's fun.
It is. Well, yeah. No, that's the easiest. That's a great way of putting it, because it's absent of thought in a sense.
Yes.
You're not, and I get what you're saying, and to somebody who's listening to this, my goal is in this moment to try and explain to you kind of what it feels like and maybe what it doesn't feel like, which is, it's not just you, when I'm telling a story or when you're channeling a particular kind of transmission of sorts, I'm not thinking about it.
Yes.
So much as I'm like staying super present, like I am right now, just like staring you in the eyes, really listening to what you have to say, and letting it just flow right through me.
Exactly.
Right? And we've heard this, some people have heard this before. Like, it's not happening to you, it's not happening for you, it's happening through you. And there's like,
you.
Yeah. And it's very nuanced between those three kind of states, if you will. And they kind of look like one another, and they can masquerade as one another. And there's these levels of all of these arts: magic, hypnotism, I mean, everything to do with even spirituality. It has these kind of levels, in a sense, to it.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, I often view spiritual gifts or intuition like martial arts. You know, because the psychic world or the intuitive world, whatever label you want to put, because it's still not mainstream. Yeah, it's not as richly explained as it could be. You know, they just see, oh, psychic is a psychic, intuitive is intuitive. But no, like, there's as many different psychics as there are martial arts. And there's white belt to black belt. You have certain past life psychics. You have medical psychics. You have, higher self psychics. So there's so many different styles and so many different levels to explore. And that's what makes it super exciting. Yeah. And, one thing that we do know for sure is we know the channeling state is real, right? Whether you want to call it being in the zone, being in flow, we know the channeling state is real, and we know it's indicative of when your brain is in gamma. When your brain is in the gamma frequency. And most people have had the experience of, let's say they're giving advice to a loved one, and because they care and they're so in tune with their friend or whoever wanting to help, that they get this effortless flow of wisdom that they say to their friend, that their friend's like, wow, that was good. And you're like, yeah, I know, that was good.
It's like it lands like a meme all of a sudden. It's just this meme is rooming through. And I'm saying that as a joke to soften it, because it's part of that. That kind of feels like that.
Absolutely.
Because it's like almost like you're reading the meme as you said it.
Exactly.
It's you're experiencing it as it flowed literally right through you.
100%, so it's like, when you're just as blown away by the wisdom or the words as the other person, that's the channeling. Now, whether it comes from higher self or angels, that doesn't matter. We can get into that stuff. It's just wisdom. I like to just give it's wisdom. You're channeling wisdom.